Okay, let's do it then. So what I would love to talk about tonight is what just happened in the mobile world in the last 50 years. It's not that long, right? Just takes like maybe 30 minutes or so. And therefore, to show you a little bit how much time it actually takes to get new technologies into the market in general. And to talk about what it takes to come from a setup like this, which is a picture that was taken in like 54 in Germany. That was the introduction of the A-net, which was the first mobile network in Germany. And how we're getting there, the fancy smart glasses. And to give you an idea about the mobile evolution in the last 50 years. Does anyone know this guy? Who thinks that Graham Bell was the inventor of the phone? Everybody does, right? So in 1861, Graham Bell patented the first phone. I think it was in 1874. Johann Philipp Reis came up with this little device, which is basically what also somehow inspired Graham Bell for his patent. And that's another kind of interesting invention, because this is the first phone cell during a show in Berlin in 1904, which was done by Wilhelm Quante, a guy that grew up very, very close to the place in Germany where I grew up. And I can still remember this phone because my grandparents had this one, right? And that was the first phone that I remember that my parents had. Right? It looks completely weird. But just to let you know that this development of new technologies, and when we're trying to kind of squeeze a new technology into a market, it really, really takes time. Again, this is 1904, and these were the phone cells in Germany that they've kind of put all over the place in the 70s, and now these phone cells are looking like this. I don't even know who ever use a phone cell anymore, but they still have them around, they're still setting them up. So I told you already, the A-net, okay, it was in 1958. The first mobile network that they've had in Germany, and the first digital network got introduced in 1992. But I mean, most of you guys know this already, and it's quite boring to see, what was really going on with phone networks. And therefore, I think we should talk a little bit more about visionaries and what some of these visionaries for this industry were thinking about, like almost 100 years ago, and especially making the impossible possible. These are some pictures about ideas of mobile devices that a couple of companies were creating, like this one. I think that one was from Toshiba in the 1960s. So they already had a kind of a phone with a display where you could make video calls with it. And up to how we're using smartwatches right now. I'm using one each and every day with a Pebble watch, and I absolutely love it. And this is going to be one of the huge trends in 2014. Or about this guy who is already building smart glasses on his own for the last 15 years. He's completely crazy. So does anyone know this guy? Tesla. There you go. Just this weekend, or last weekend, there was they unveiled a Nikola Tesla statue in Menlo Park in the Silicon Valley, and it was a Kickstarter project, and they wanted to have a bronze statue of Nikola Tesla over there to kind of show people, what an amazing inventor he was. And it also comes with free Wi-Fi, and Nicole and me were backing up the Kickstarter project, and therefore we also have our name in the stock, and we're super proud of this. So next time we're going to go to the Valley, right, we have to just take a look at it to find our name. But Nikola Tesla is also the inventor of the very first BlackBerry, and not a lot of people actually know about this. He wrote an amazing article in the magazine for Popular Mechanics in 1909, where he was just talking about what's going to happen in the future, how we're going to communicate. And so he was just coming up with this inexpensive instrument, slightly bigger than a watch, and that will enable someone, a businessman, that is mobile and traveling, and just type a text in there, and it will immediately show up in an office somewhere in New York, right? And he came up with this idea in 1909. Or do you know this guy? Ooh, he's a science fiction author. That's Isaac Asimov, and he wrote an amazing novel, Return from the Stars, where he was basically not only talking about the very first Kindle, but also talking about the distribution channel and the idea how disruptive this is going to be in the way we're going to read books in the future. So he was talking about this device, and in the future that people are going to a bookstore. Well, at that time he still thought this would be a kind of offline or physical bookstore, and where you can just download each and every book that is in the bookstore on this small single device. And once again, he came up with this idea about 52 years ago. The inventors of cloud computing. I remember that like 5 or 6 years ago, everybody was talking about cloud computing, and it was this big buzzword. And you know, whenever you went to any conference, it was all about cloud computing. And I thought, oh my God, that is so boring, because the inventors of the cloud computing were also coming from the 60s. It was the MIT and IBM, because in the early 60s, they came up with this time-sharing solution. So they had these huge mainframes at that time, and it was all about, you know, how can we let other people join this computing power, and how can we share this computing power in the future. Do you know this guy? That's Alan Kay. Alan Kay was also one of the craziest inventors ever. He was working for Xerox in the 60s before he left for Apple, and this is a little device that he invented in the late 60s. It was pretty much the very first iPad, or pretty much the very first tablet computer. And he built this for schools because he thought that it's going to be a personal computer for children of all ages, and it's going to change the way they're going to get educated in the future. Because to be honest, it just makes no sense to me at all to print any school books or any educational stuff on dead wood, because as soon as you're printing it, it's already outdated. So he came up with this device, which got copied from Apple in 1989. And then Steve Jobs actually asked him about this. He was already working at Apple at that time. He asked him about, you know, what can we do in terms of a tablet computer, a computer that I can just put into my bag, and it's always going to be with me. And so Alan Kay told him, make the screen 5 inches by 8 inches and you will rule the world, which was basically the screen format of a modern iPad right now. The question is always, and whenever I'm going to a conference, people are always asking me, what's going to be the next big thing? And the whole industry is searching for the next big thing, because when we're looking at how saturated the markets are right now, and especially when we're talking about tablets and smartphones, especially in the Western markets, right? They're completely saturated. We see a kind of the growth rates on high-end devices is flattening out, and therefore all these OEMs and all these manufacturers are thinking about just, you know, what's really going to be the next big thing, and what's really going to kick some asses. And is it going to be smart glasses? These are just some examples of some smart glasses that are coming out in 2014, especially this one over here and that one. I'm not so sure about the dock version of the Google Glass. It might gonna happen, you never know. Is it going to be smartwatches? Right? Smartwatches are all over the place. I mean, with Samsung or Sony already has this 3rd generation of a smartwatch in the market for over half a year right now. Now Samsung joined them with their Galaxy Gear. And what you can see over here, this is a Sony watch, the 3rd generation. That's the Pebble watch that I'm wearing right now. And this is an IM watch, which comes from an Italian manufacturer, and they entered the market early this year. To just let you know how difficult it's going to be for these devices to be really successful, we should just take a look at the adoption rate of the smartphone and compare it to a telephone, a mobile phone. So this is just telling you the time from a 10 to a 40% penetration on the market, and smartphones just made it in 2.5 years, right? And I'm not so sure about that 40% of the potential customers are going to wear a smartwatch in 2016. Well, you never know. So to just show you how important smartphones are in our lives, I took this picture. I think that was on the Dawn MRT station while I was waiting for the MRT. And like each and every person waiting for the MRT was looking at their smartphone. Whenever I'm getting on the MRT, like 80% of them are at least looking at their smartphone or playing or watching a movie on the tablet. So smartphones are everywhere. But it's also important to understand that without fundamental technologies behind a future platform, designers have nothing to work with. And so very, very crucial for an R&D center, whether it's here in Taiwan or somewhere else in the world, to really talk to the engineers, because the designers always wanted to create crazy stuff, right? And then the engineers are telling them, hey, wait a minute, we're not going to release this technology in the next 5 years. We love your design, but that's not going to happen soon. And therefore, I would love to show you some very interesting technologies that are going to reshape this industry in the upcoming years. And first of all, this is all about displays and battery technology, because these are the most fundamental technologies when it comes to a mobile device. Without displays, a mobile device won't work, and without a battery, of course without a battery, it won't work. And it's going to it's limiting the designers in general. Let's talk about displays first. So we did this video, I think it was back in March. Nicole and me, we went up to Taoyuan to meet a crazy company. What was it? Polyflex?
Polytron.
Polytron. They had a crazy CEO and a crazy inventor, and he said, you know what, the next smartphone is going to be completely transparent. And he was showing us this prototype, and this was actually a transparent multi-touch display. Of course, there's no PCB in there, there's no processor in there, there's no graphic card in there, there's no operating system running on it. But the display itself was working, right? And he's talking to all these huge OEMs because they want to adopt it, because this is going to change the way our smartphone's going to look like in the future. A smartphone turned into one of the most personal devices that we have. Besides maybe a TV screen or a car, right? We kind of love to customize our smartphone. We have specific sleeves. Some people are putting some Swarovski crystals on the back and Hello Kitty stuff and whatnot. I know it sounds very Asian, but it's happening all over the world now. And of course, it's also about flexible displays. The first flexible display, first flexible OLED displays that we saw, that's almost like 4 years ago. It was at a show in Tokyo, and this is a picture of a flexible OLED display that we saw during this Computex, I guess, from a Taiwanese company. So what's going to happen with flexible displays is, so over here you really have a device that is running a flexible display. This was shown by Samsung. It's their Hume display. I think Hume was the name. They've been showing this at CES in January this year. And basically, they were kind of folding the display around the edge of the smartphone, so you can still have it in the case or in the sleeve, and you can get messages. And you can also have devices that you're going to extend with an additional flexible display. You're just pulling it out of the device, and you will extend your screen real estate with it. Transparent displays will definitely change the world, because in terms of customization, it gives me so many options. Well, think about, the first transparent smartphone that is coming to the market, or the first company that is bringing a transparent smartphone to the market. Guess what they're going to do with it? They're going to give you all kinds of little apps that's going to customize it. And the after sales for these companies will be very, very interesting. Especially when we're talking about, you want to have this special Christmas wallpaper that makes your smartphone look like it's coming straight from North Pole or whatever. You can download it for the next 30 days, right? And it will be exclusive and limited to this device. And it turns it in a completely different looking device. This is a picture of a transparent smart window from Samsung that we saw about 2 years ago at CES. So what they're doing is, it's a technology that is almost at 90% of transparency. Just to give you an idea, an ordinary window is about 95% of transparency. It's never 100% transparent. But now they're adding multi-touch to this. So could you imagine that each and every window will turn into a display in the future? When you're going to a shopping mall somewhere, or shopping mall somewhere, and each and every window will be capable of giving you additional information about what's happening in the shops. So this technology is around. The problem is right now, it's just way too expensive for them to produce it. Well, because, I mean, first of all, there's no real market for it right now, and the production process of this device is just still so expensive because they're just losing so many units during the production process. This is another interesting Taiwanese company that we've met about half a year ago, and they were showing us, you know, for me it was absolutely mind-blown. I always thought, you know, these flexible displays, that's the cool new shit. But these guys are definitely going to reshape the world of mobile devices, because each and every device that we have right now is limited when it comes to battery life, and when it comes to how the battery is shaped. The designers have to create the device around the battery. And I'm pretty sure that there's not a single person in this room that is not constantly complaining about the battery life of whatever mobile device. We're always kind of running into this limit where, like, at the end of the day, and you think, oh my God, geez, I'm at 10% of battery life, right? And then you're trying to kind of limit yourself. Okay, maybe I'm just gonna turn down the brightness to 10%, or I'm not answering this email anymore, and all of this shit, which is kind of annoying. So what these guys did, they have a completely flexible battery. It's going to be, geez, I was so big at that time. It's not only flexible, but you can also cut it, and it will still work. So the remaining cells of the batteries will still work after you cut it, and it's not leaking, which is very, very important for new wearable technology. Could you imagine you're going to wear a smartwatch or smart glasses or smart shoes or smart shirts in the future, and the battery breaks, or it's leaking acid onto your skin? You just don't want to have this happen. So nothing is going to happen with their flexible batteries. That's fundamental technology, hardware-wise. But it's also about how we're creating an ecosystem of not always on, because we have this always on scenario already, but about this ubiquitous computing, which is another buzzword. I know that. That's why I'm using it. To give you an idea how we came from the mainframe to Ubicomp, this is basically what we've had in the 60s. Right? There was a mainframe, there was one computer, and many people were using it. And then the age of the PC came up. Like, each and every person wanted to have one computer. And I don't know how many billions of PCs got sold, but once again, these markets, especially on the Western markets, are completely saturated. And now we're turning into something called the Ubicomp, or ubiquitous computing, where one person has so many different computers and so many different devices. And of course, egoists will love Ubicomp because it's all about you, right? So whatever computer, whatever data you have, whatever services you're subscribing to, it's just basically all about you. Future Ubicomp markets are becoming quite interesting, especially when we're looking at the automotive industry, which was an industry that's been sleeping for so many decades, which is basically also a matter of their life cycles. For example, if Mercedes or BMW is planning a new car, right, or they're releasing a new car like this year, they started to plan this 7 years ago. These are these traditional life cycles in the car industry. And of course, once again, smart windows and how we're going to use them. Display technology will completely reshape the car industry. And I'm not only talking about, this is a prototype, right? But this is a Tesla S. And they're selling it already for way over a year now. And they have like these huge, it's a 19-inch 1080p display. It's powered by an NVIDIA Tegra 3 processor, and it's running HTML5 apps. And they have another, this is also a display in here with another Tegra 3 processor in there, and they're also running HTML5 apps on it. They really brought it to a new level of how we're going to use computing power in our cars in the future. So there are quite some prototypes here. Could you imagine, especially in a city like Taipei, who's actually driving a car in Taiwan? There are 2, there are 3. Are you also driving in Taipei? That's a better question. Okay, brave guys here. So what is Zipcar doing? Zipcar is all about car sharing. What we're going to see in metropolitan areas, car sharing is becoming very big. People are just, especially younger people, are not really interested to buy a car anymore. Whether they're so into this public transport system, which is very convenient, and especially in a city like Taipei, also very cheap because it got heavily subsidized by the government. But do you really need a car? And for example, when I'm going to Austin, San Francisco, or also in Berlin, I always see this car sharing companies popping up. You have Car2Go, you have Zipcar. And the last time I was in Berlin in September, I've been talking to a cab driver, and I asked him, I said, you know what, we just saw like 3 of these Car2Go minis passing us. Is it any kind of threat to your industry? He said, yeah. We can definitely tell, because people love to use this car sharing. Car2Go is a decentralized car sharing service. So what you're going to do with it is you basically have your little app from Car2Go. You can search on a map where the next Car2Go is. You're just getting into the car, you're driving it somewhere, and then you're going to leave it there. And the next person is going to pick it up over there. And due to this is of course very convenient. But what about this technology and this computing power? And once again, what I said earlier, that a car is such a personal device, like a phone, and that we love to customize it. And each and every car sharing platform looks the same. And sometimes you just don't want it to look like this. You just don't want people to know that you're actually driving a car that is shared with maybe 1,000 other people. So what's going to happen in the future with the car industry? Now just imagine this. You're going to download an app on your device, right? And you're going to customize your whole experience with your car. You have a little NFC module in your smartphone, and you're opening the car with your NFC module. And actually the app knows each and every favorites when it comes to colors and music and your favorite apps of you, even the lighting. So you're getting into your car, and I've used this Tesla model again, and could you imagine that immediately the screen will just change completely and your favorite apps will show up over there. All your data will be in this car. Your points of interest, your routes that you have in your system. It will even come up with different colors. And talking about colors, this is a very interesting project from Toyota. They've been revealing this 2 years ago. So they have flexible OLED displays all over the car. And of course, with a display, you can make it look like you can choose your favorite color, you can put advertisement on it, whatever. So the shared car of the future will be the car that you actually want. It will have your colors from the outside, it will have your lights from the inside, even the color of the lights will be different. Philips is doing this with their U project. It will have your favorite radio station, it will have your favorite apps on there. What's also very interesting is we've been talking about this for like 15 years. I remember to see my first connected home from Microsoft like 10 years ago. And it's still like 10 years ahead of what we can see on the market right now. And I was constantly wondering, why is this actually not happening? The technology is available. It is actually happening. The problem is that companies, whether it's Samsung or Microsoft or whoever, they always want to sell you the whole package. Right? There's no real modular system available. And I think, especially with Android, this is going to change this a little bit. Google started the Android at Home project also quite a while ago. It was like over a year ago, right? Just it's just happening. It gives you, especially gives hardware manufacturers and developers an inexpensive and free platform to develop on top of it, not only software but also hardware. And just to give you an idea about how big this market is, Amazon.com launched this back in September. So they have their own home automation portal on Amazon.com right now. And they're selling a shitload of devices. Just in 2013, 1.5 million home automation systems were installed in the US. And it's just the very beginning of it. And as you can see, that number is expected to grow to 8 million by 2017. So in general, this isn't about a smartphone or a tablet or a car or whatever. It's about platforms and how we're going to use future technologies and how we're going to bring it all together. And therefore, the mobile computing industry, even though it seems kind of boring right now because smartphones are constantly looking the same and tablets are kind of constantly looking the same. It's just at the very, very beginning of it, and it's really going to kick off next year, especially with all the wearable technology that we're going to see in 2014. Thanks.